Ys as a series has a very long and deep history, both in-universe and out. After finishing Ys 2, I've been thinking about various things, and I wanted to do a little comparison between the first game and the second game, along with just giving my general thoughts and opinions about Ys 2. Because oh boy, do I have a lot to talk about. Some things I think Falcom did better than the first game, and others I do feel like they were a bit of a step back. So, without any further delay, let's begin our journey into the vast, mystical land of Ys 2. Now, something that I feel was partially missing from Ys 2 was that feeling of discovery. Now, for me, as someone who has not played very many Ys games at this point in time, but when I think of Ys as a game series, I think of adventure, I think of discovery, I think of wonder, of awe, exploration, what it truly means to be an adventurer. Yeah, I know there's all the, the saving the world stuff, all the waifus and whatnot. Yeah, it's kind of secondary. But that's what I feel the main draw of the Ys series is. It truly feels like you are going on this adventure with Adol. Adol very much feels like a character himself, and you are just getting to experience his adventures through his eyes, thanks to the journals that he's been writing throughout all of his journeys so far. And this is where my first kind of nitpicky complaint comes into play. That feeling felt kinda muted in the second game. Because, well, yes, you did go through all these areas and explore all these dungeons and stuff. It felt far more linear than the first game. At least until you got to Solomon's Shrine, which, to be fair, that's like the halfway point of the game. Then it truly opens up, but it is also only one dungeon, and you very rarely come out to interact with the people in Ramia Village, except that for very, very specific circumstances. Whereas in Ys 1, once you left the port town of Barbado, the whole entire land of Asteria was essentially your oyster. You could go to Minea if you wanted to. You could also leave Minea. Yeah, you did have that NPC who's like, hey, you can't go that way. But you could just ignore him and keep going. You can explore that whole area. You could go into the mines if you wanted to. You could bumble your way to the front of Darm Tower. You had to go through Goban first, but I still vividly remember when I accidentally walked into the mines. I saw that game over screen after those enemies destroyed me, and it was like, oh, I'm not meant to be here. But it still let me go there. In Ys 2, you didn't have that feeling of openness, that feeling of, I can just explore wherever I want. Even though, yes, they are fundamentally the exact same progression system, in that if you really boil it down, they're both very linear with, go here, grab this, then go here, do this dungeon, then go here, fight this boss. Like, they're both the same formula, but Ys 1 just had that extra feeling, that extra sense of openness to it that I really enjoyed. The map of Ys 1 is a lot smaller in comparison to Ys 2. Ys 2, there's a lot more meat to it, but because of that openness in Ys 1, it felt a lot bigger. It felt more grand in scope. And that's a feeling that, at least for the first half of Ys 2, is kind of lost. Like, yeah, you do have, they are replaced by different feelings, like, oh, I'm on this floating island in the sky, oh, that's crazy. Oh, what, there's magic now? It does things differently, which is great. It sacrifices that sense of freedom for a more focused experience overall. But despite Ys 2 being over double the size of the first game in terms of playtime and length, it still manages to feel somehow more constrained. Even though Ys 1 is the shorter experience, it felt bigger at its core. Because even the dungeons themselves felt very linear too. It just was like, okay, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna grab the MacGuffin that I need that will let me go and fight the boss. Okay, I fought the boss. Now I get to go into the next dungeon and repeat the same thing. Whereas in Ys 1, yeah, you would go into a dungeon, but then you would leave the dungeon, you would go back to town, you would go and visit other towns, speak to other NPCs. And in Ys 2, you kinda had to go out of your way to see all of that stuff. And while I understand that the floating isle of Ys, it's meant to be more contained to the story surrounding the goddesses and the hunting down of the descendants of the priests. And it focuses more on the storytelling aspect, where at Ys 1 it was very light in story. You kinda just discovered things on your own, and most of the story was told to you through the books of Ys specifically. So in terms of atmosphere, I definitely did prefer Ys 1 over Ys 2. And while not the main focus of the story, one thing that I love how Falcom shows off in these two games is Adol himself as a character. Instead of just making him a complete blank slate and your typical self-insert protagonist, they choose to give him an actual personality. But they do it in a way that's very subtle and that's also very easy to miss if you're just going through the story and going through the motions. From little things like giving gifts to the NPCs. For me? Well, you've been really nice, so okay, I'll give you some of my, oh wait, no! He's actually gonna I'll give you some of my best smoked meat in return. This is the good stuff, I promise. I'm an expert chef. Actual tangible friendship benefits, let's go! Smoked meat! And helping out people in need, like guiding Luta back home in Ys 1 when he was having those sleepwalking troubles, or helping out Dr. Flair in Ys 2, making the medicine for Lilia to literally save her life. Not only is Adol the perfect embodiment of the adventurer's spirit, the endless horizon, the boundless curiosity, but he also embodies the spirit of what makes humanity good, the selfless helping of others, the willingness to put yourself in harm's way for the greater good, showing kindness and compassion, but also that touch of playfulness and mischief that just makes Adol even more of an endearing character than he already is. And again, it is something that's subtly shown throughout the story of both of these games, and it's intentionally done in a way to not detract from the main focus and the main themes of the games, but still be enough to make you appreciate Adol's character even more. And is something that I imagine as we get further along in the main games, it would just continue to shine ever brighter. But now, moving over into the gameplay section. This one is also kind of, it's interesting, to say the least, because for a solid, 75% of the game, most of the boss enemies are completely immune to your sword strikes. Oh, I do no damage to him. I can get behind him and die. So, in order to combat that, they give you magic. Now, on one hand, having all these different magic abilities is really cool, but also on the other hand, I wish they were able to do a little bit more with it, or at least give us the RPG trifecta of fire, ice, and lightning magic. Maybe have ice not deal damage, but slow enemies down, and have lightning be more of an AoE type of magic, but weaker than fire. As far as attacking magic goes, we only had access to fire magic. So, instead of running around the bosses and waiting for that perfect moment to attack them, by bumping into them, You had to wait for the exact moment where their weak spot would appear, which would allow you to attack them with your fireballs. But that would often lead to just kiting the boss around the map and then just spamming the attack button whenever the opportunity presented itself. The first couple of bosses were not particularly difficult, except the one in the ice area. That one, oh boy, I had a lot of trouble with that one. But I would probably say out of the generic bosses, that one was my favorite. I actually felt rewarded when I defeated it. It felt like an earned victory, instead of just running in a circle, waiting for the boss to do nothing, and then hitting them with fireballs. And the other magic spells, the light spell that lit up dark areas and revealed secrets on the map, unless I'm misremembering, you really only used it in the very first dungeon. You don't use it anywhere else, so it's kind of useless. Now, the teleport magic, I use that one all the time. That one was very handy, which acted as a sort of fast travel to various different spots around the map. The magic that turns Adol into a Roo, aka Adaroo, was very fun. I quite liked that one.
Your name's Adol? Not here it isn't. Here your name is Adaroo? Adaroo, it's the law.
Annalise would have an absolute field day here, wouldn't she? Not only could you use it to just go through an area and not have to fight any of the monsters, if maybe you were backtracking for some reason, but it also let you talk to all of the monsters, the demons, sorry, my bad, and get little unique pieces of dialogue with them, and for the most part it's either fluff or just like funny dev talk. But there were a couple where they gave you just a little tiny piece of important information. That's how I found out the name of one of the big bads, that his name was Dals, was by talking to a demon. And he mentioned his name and I was like, oh, Dales? Dallas? Is it like Dallas, Texas? Or is it, maybe it's just Dale. Like Dale Gribble.
Pocket sand.
Ooh, cool. Again, that felt very rewarding to me. I felt like my exploration and the time that I spent going around and talking to all of them was actually worthwhile. Now, the other two spells you don't get until the very end of the game, that being time magic, which, allows you to stop time. Oh, wow, crazy, I know. It's more useful for turning into, like, Adaroo, where it lets you go around enemies. It also stops enemies in their tracks and just kind of lets you wail on them. I guess it's useful for grinding if you really want to get through it and not have to worry about getting injured or anything. And then the last piece of magic, shield magic, which is, in my opinion, absolutely 100% acquired in order to fight the last boss. But looping back to the original point, I do wish that there was more to it, at least in regards to attacking the boss enemies. It did get kinda stale just chucking fireballs at them all the time. Now, getting the Falcon idol that combined with the fire magic and made the big fireballs explode into smaller fireballs, that was really cool. You gotta give props for that. That was awesome. Discovering that, that was definitely a highlight of the game for me. And getting to use it on Zava, of all people, was very satisfying. And all her stupid little bats. But then by the time you get the Claria sword, you don't use magic anymore because Dals and Darm are immune to magic. So you did go back to your roots of just bumping into them, which felt very refreshing. Let's knock this one out of the way real quick. The music. I have nothing bad to say about the music. Jindo, once again, can never miss. He took Koshiro's tracks and made them just as incredible. From the town themes, to the boss themes, to the exploration themes, the dungeon themes, they were all well placed, and the arrangements of them were peak. That's it. That's all I have to say. The music in both of these games was absolutely phenomenal. Now, onto the characters and the NPCs themselves. I do like how in this game the NPCs felt a lot more helpful, but on the other hand, they also felt a lot more fourth wall breaky with some of the comments that they would make. If you keep giving me gifts, I'm running out of dialogue options, that's what I want. I love making NPCs run out of dialogue options. No matter how much you give me, you're not getting anything in return. I'm not I'm not like other NPCs, I swear. Brody's self-aware. We gotta kill him, Adol, quick. Get rid of the evidence. He's gonna escape the simulation. I love the silly dialogue in this game. Which, you know, that's the kind of humor that I like. But I could definitely see, you know, after the first couple of times, people who maybe don't enjoy that type of humor just start rolling their eyes like, alright, I'm not going to talk to NPCs anymore. They have nothing interesting to say. But yeah, the NPCs would give you hints on where various things were hidden, and as far as loot and things that you could take and sell to the various shops, where various items that you could go and pick up were around the field, like apples or flowers. NPCs talking about the town itself, other people in the village. Even back then, Falcom still making NPCs interesting enough that I want to seek them out. And that's an accomplishment in and of itself. Now, as far as the actual characters go, getting to meet the descendants of the 6 priests and, you know, putting the pieces together and trying to figure out, okay, which one is this character related to, which one is this character related to, was really fun. And getting to see all of them come together at the very end, pushing Adol forward, Luta coming in, Chad Luta, he's my man. Bringing us the shield, the Claria shield. Oh, it was awesome. It made that ending sequence so much better. But that is the thing that I do wish they expounded upon a little bit more. I imagine that's what Origin is for, going deeper into Ys's past and all the priests themselves and how things ended up the way they did. Because we learned a lot about its past through the books of Ys in the first game. In terms of lore, at the very least, we really didn't get that much into. It really did focus more on the immediate adventure of Adol going through and fighting the big bad and using the power of the 6 priests, the descendants, to seal away or destroy, defeat this ancient evil once and for all. And I guess segueing into those big bads, I really do hope Origin, again, delves deeper into how they came to be. Were they normal people at one point who were tempted into the side of darkness by Darm himself? Who is Darm? Is Darm just this ancient evil god? Is he just this entity? Because we also didn't get that much info about Darm. It was just kind of, most of the game is Dahl's taunting you and laughing at you, and then you get to the end and you just fight Darm, and he's like, yeah, I'm this ancient entity, I'm evil, blah blah blah, I rule all of the demons, I'm gonna destroy the world, bahaha, stupid humans, and then that's it. But that is the one thing I will say, despite Dark Fact being, I believe, just a simple subordinate of Darm, who was sent down below to gather the books of Ys, he was far more intimidating and memorable than Darm. I think that's just funny, you know? I think it's funny. This subordinate who, you know, in universe is more than likely much weaker than him, he was far more intimidating as a force as a final boss fight too. Just over the course of Ys 1, it's like, oh, this shadowy man is walking around doing spooky things, he's creeping around, and then you fight him at the end and he's intimidating, he has these big horns, his boss fight sucks, but it's like in a good way, because it's actually difficult and you feel like you earn that victory against this overwhelming force, whereas Darm's fight, you had so much going with you. You had the sword that was blessed by the goddesses, you had the Claria shield, you had literal shield magic, you had a potion that could bring you back to life, you had so many cheat codes.
Hacks! I call hacks!
It kind of made the final boss fight a little underwhelming. And even if you strip all of those extra toys away, you know, the potion, the magic, and you just go mano a mano, the boss fight itself, it was more of a spectacle than Dark Facts, but it was nowhere near as difficult as Dark Facts. I still enjoyed it, but I definitely prefer Dark Fact over Darm, at least in terms of difficulty. Because when I beat Dark Fact, I wanted to raise my fist up high and just say, yeah, I did it. Whereas with Darm, I beat him and I was like, yeah, get out of here. I want to see the cutscene. I want to see the cutscene at the end of the game. Hurry up. I don't care about you.
Shoot fly, don't bother me.
Now Dal's on the other hand, as far as an antagonist, I think he serves his purpose. He's good enough. He's not the best, he's not great, but again, this is an older game, so, you know, I'm not gonna hold a lot of the... And in terms of storytelling and stuff, it's a lot better than most other games of that genre back in that time period. But in terms of comparing it to, you know, today's standards, he's very generic. But I will say I do appreciate just his pure narcissism and how self-confident he was in his own abilities, that even when Adol was foiling his plans, it didn't matter. He was so confident in his own magic bestowed to him by Darm that he viewed Adol as essentially an insect that could be swatted away at any moment. And again, you know, like most bosses, it's their hubris that's their downfall. He had so many opportunities to get rid of Adol at an earlier stage, but he just didn't. He would pop up at various points, mock Adol for his powerlessness, how he was looking forward to essentially seeing Adol filled with despair, and he was very obviously deriving pleasure from messing with Adol.
But you live out your days, is that what you have struggled against for so long? This form is most appropriate for one who would so readily dance at the goddess's whim.
Oh, what the... Oh, really? Yes, really. Deal with it.
Oh, what a big jerk.
Oh, this lowly human. Look at him scurrying around, trying to stop me and my plans. And then he comes in with a Clarion sword. Shoom! Off with your head. It was fun. He was a fun antagonist, despite being very generic. And even Zava, like, I feel Zava is an important character, but there was really nothing with Zava. Like, she was higher up in, like, a leadership position, but we defeated her, and Dolls was like, I don't care. He was very single-minded in his mission to locate and find the descendants of the priests and get rid of them. So yeah, I will actually praise this game's story. In terms of the first game, comparing it to the first game, I mean, it is significantly better. It was a lot more, the ride was a lot more fun. There was more to it, there was more happening, so I will give Falcom props for that. Oh, the set pieces too, with the bell atop the tower, oh, the music inside of the goddess's palace. I literally walked out onto the balcony at the perfect moment when the vocals kicked in and you were looking out below at Asteria and the clouds moving around and oh, the graphics, I gotta say, yeah, that's an old game, it's a remake of an old game, I know that, but man, this game had some stunning vistas. I absolutely adored them. Beautiful. To wrap things up here, what East 2 sacrificed in terms of its more open air feeling, it made up for with the increase in the amount of characters, important characters that they showcased, the storytelling, and the scope of the game itself. Because, oh boy, I have not talked about it yet, but Solomon Shrine, this feels like, you know how Dark Fact is like regarded as one of the worst boss fights, the most infamous boss fights. This feels like that, but in dungeon form. Because this place was big, there were so many dead ends and corridors to go down and places to get lost in, that without a map of some kind, I don't know how most people would have got through here back in the day. And we finally got to start exploring the shrine, and man, you guys were not kidding. That place is so confusing. It's just, everything looks the same, and what was the designer of that place thinking? What, do they work at Falcom anymore? Do they get canned after this game came out? Now, I didn't need a map. I just kind of bumbled my way around until I eventually found where I was supposed to go next. You know, that is a strategy. But one thing that I did here was, this was supposed to be, you know, back in the day, this was meant to be a place that you drew out on your own. And it was meant to have more interactivity in that sense. And it's like, oh, that's actually really cool. I do appreciate that aspect when games go for that more interactive element. I know first-person dungeon crawlers did that a lot. So in terms of that aspect, I do appreciate it, but man, was the shrine itself a slog to get through. It was easily half of my playtime. And you know, if they switched up the scenery a bit here and there, I think if they made, you know, some landmarks that were a bit easier to recognize, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But the verticality of the place, all the different, you know, levels, up, down, the sewers, having to teleport to the different places, oh, it was a big headache. And I like the dungeon, I do. I just wish it was done better, is all I can say. I wish it wasn't as frustrating as it was. But overall, East 2 was a game that I did vastly enjoy. Getting to experience the conclusion of Adol's journey across the land of East and Asteria as a whole was very satisfying in the end, and just made me excited to see what further journeys await us and our red-haired protagonist. And while I do have some nitpicks and gripes with some things in East 2, I do think overall the game is an improvement from the first one. And when combined together, they make one heck of an epic journey that I don't think I will ever forget. And it's only because of this channel and, well, you guys watching or listening right now that I've even embarked on this adventure of mine. So, to all of you out there right now, I just want to say thank you. This has been Cyrus, your host. I hope you enjoyed this little review of mine. Leave a like on it if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and you enjoy the type of content that I produce. And of course, a very special thank you to all current channel members and supporters over on Patreon. Anybody else wants to support the channel, you get things like early access up to a week in advance on all of my videos, and other little tidbits here and there. Feel free to check out any of the links below if you would like to do so. Thanks for stopping by. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out, stay spicy.
All right, what's next?